Presently, I am 428 years old according to the human calendar.
Among all the creatures that wander the dark corners of the Witcher universe, none are as fascinating or as misunderstood as Emiel Regis Rohellec Terzieff-Godefroy, better known as Regis. To most players and readers, he's the eloquent, moral vampire who travels with Geralt in Blood and Wine. But beneath that calm wisdom lies a story that stretches across 4 centuries, soaked in tragedy, transformation, and mystery. How did this vampire live more than 400 years? How could he return from what looked like certain death when others could not? And why, despite his rebirth, did the one he once loved never come back? Regis's legend isn't just about immortality. It's about the cost of it, the science behind it, and the meaning that keeps him alive when eternity itself wants to consume him. Regis's origin begins thousands of years before the events of The Witcher, during the conjunction of the spheres, the cataclysmic moment when creatures from other dimensions were thrust onto the continent. Among those beings were the higher vampires, a race of hyper-evolved entities that are almost impossible to kill. They do not belong fully to the physical realm, existing partially out of phase with human reality. That's why weapons, sunlight, fire, or even magic rarely harm them permanently. When Geralt later encounters Regis, the vampire casually explains that silver and holy water have no real effect on him, myths built by terrified humans. According to the lore drawn from Andrzej Sapkowski's novels and The Witcher 3, higher vampires are self-sustaining organisms. They can regenerate from any physical damage, including complete dismemberment, because their bodies are held together by a biological structure far more advanced than mortal flesh. This is the foundation of Regis's survival. He doesn't live long by luck, but by the very nature of what he is. But Regis's immortality isn't simply biology. It's forged through experience and self-control. Early in his life, centuries before he met Geralt, Regis lived as most vampires did, indulgent, careless, and addicted to blood. For higher vampires, blood isn't a necessity. It's more like a drug, a temptation. Drinking it amplifies their senses and emotions, but too much of it makes them reckless. Regis was one of those who couldn't resist. He flew through the night in a drunken haze, crashed into a village well, and was caught by terrified humans. They decapitated him, drove stakes through his body, doused him in holy water, and buried him in pieces. For an ordinary monster, that would be the end. But for a higher vampire, it was merely the beginning of a slow, painful rebirth. It took Regis 50 years to regenerate underground.
How long were you in the mud?
Oh, 50 years.
50 years of silence, darkness, and rebuilding. His bones reforming, his nerves reconnecting, his consciousness drifting between madness and lucidity. When he finally crawled out of his grave, he wasn't the same creature anymore. That event became his rebirth not only in body but in spirit. He vowed never again to drink blood, to live with restraint, and to seek meaning in the mortal world. This is why, centuries later, when Geralt meets him, Regis isn't just an immortal, he's a philosopher. He heals instead of kills. He performs surgery instead of feeding. His immortality transformed from curse to calling. And that decision to change his nature may be the real reason he endured when so many others perished. Still, even a creature as resilient as Regis isn't immune to destruction. In the book Baptism of Fire, Regis faces Vilgefortz, one of the most powerful sorcerers in the Witcher universe. During that encounter, Vilgefortz disintegrates Regis's body, burns him until there's nothing left but ash. It's one of the few moments where a higher vampire appears truly dead. Fans believed that was the end of him, but decades later, in The Witcher 3, Blood and Wine, Regis returns alive and whole, suggesting that death isn't a permanent concept for beings like him. The reason, according to the game's expanded lore, is that another higher vampire, Detlev van der Aretine, used his own power and blood to bring Regis back. This detail, though subtle, explains the entire mechanism of resurrection among higher vampires. They don't die the way humans do. Instead, their essence disperses. Over time, they can reassemble their molecular and spiritual structure, but the process could take centuries. However, when another of their kind intervenes, transferring energy or blood, the process accelerates. In Regis's case, his bond with Detlev acted like a jump-start to his regeneration. That connection highlights another fascinating truth. Higher vampires can restore each other, but only if the one being resurrected still has a will to live. Regis had that will. He carried guilt, curiosity, and the drive to continue learning. In short, his mind kept him tethered to existence, even when his body was gone. But that brings us to the haunting question. If regeneration is possible, why didn't Regis's partner, often referred to as his lover or Queen of the Night, ever return? The answer lies partly in vampire hierarchy and partly in character contrast. Some sources imply that Regis's lover wasn't a true higher vampire but a lower strain, possibly one of those who retained many physical weaknesses. Lesser vampires can be destroyed permanently through decapitation or fire, as their bodies lack the dimensional resilience that defines higher vampires. If she wasn't of Regis's pure lineage, then even her love or will wouldn't have saved her from total annihilation. There's also a thematic answer, one that fits the moral core of Regis's story. Regis survived not just because he was powerful, but because he learned to let go of his predatory instincts. He redefined himself. His partner, however, may never have made that transformation. In every version of the lore, Regis's redemption is linked to self-control. He evolves beyond instinct, while others, including his kind, remain slaves to it. The tragedy of his partner's death emphasizes the price of refusal to change. Where Regis used his immortality to seek wisdom, she clung to indulgence, and it destroyed her. It's poetic, in a dark way. One vampire rises from ashes to heal, the other is lost forever in bloodlust. Thematically, Regis represents what the Witcher world constantly explores, the struggle between nature and choice. Geralt, a mutant who kills monsters yet acts more human than most people, reflects that same duality. Ciri, destined for power and chaos, fights to choose her own path. Regis embodies this balance in immortal form. He is proof that even a creature born of darkness can find light through understanding. His 400 years of life aren't just a display of survival. They're a testament to the strength of will. Each century becomes another test, each death another lesson. When he tells Geralt, "We are not monsters unless we choose to be," it hits harder when you know he's lived through death itself to earn that belief. The science and lore around his regeneration further expand on why his survival makes sense. Higher vampires operate outside human biology. Their blood contains microscopic organisms, symbiotic cells that rebuild tissue instantly and hold genetic memory. That's why Regis can reform even after total destruction. His cells don't just heal, they remember what they were. These same cells can mimic organs, skin, and even entire structures of the nervous system. But regeneration requires an energy source, which is why blood exchange with another higher vampire can quicken the process. In Regis's case, Detloff acted as both catalyst and companion, the very thing his partner lacked. That brings us to the emotional layer of his story, why his resurrection, though miraculous, is bittersweet. Regis's immortality comes with loneliness. Every human friend he's ever had has died. The woman he loved never came back. The world changes around him faster than he can adapt, and yet he continues to live because he feels a responsibility to witness, to guide, to understand. His survival isn't heroic, it's burdensome. When he returns in Blood and Wine, his manner is calm, but his eyes carry the weight of centuries. He's a being who has seen the world end more than once, and keeps walking anyway. So why does Regis's story still fascinate audiences today? Because it blends gothic mystery with philosophical depth. It's not just about a vampire who can't die, it's about what he does with that endless life. His partner's death serves as the counterweight, the reminder that immortality without change is still death. And his resurrection proves that even when existence itself falls apart, meaning can pull you back together, he is, in a sense, the ultimate survivor, not because he's indestructible, but because he chooses to rebuild. In the end, Regis's 400-year journey teaches one truth that defines the Witcher. Monsters and men are often separated not by blood but by choice. He lived through time, through guilt, and through death, and came back not as a monster but as a mirror, reflecting humanity better than most humans ever could. His immortality isn't about escaping death, it's about understanding it. And maybe that's why his lover never returned. Because resurrection in the Witcher world doesn't just demand power, it demands purpose. Regis had one. She didn't. And that, more than any spell or science, is why only he still walks the night.